There are a lot of Black and brown people in corporate America that are doing incredible work behind the scenes, and no one understands that, and no one can really appreciate that.
It seems to me like there's this superhero Black female Illuminati type situation going on, right? Like
they take proceeds from each and every purchase and reinvest back into the communities. And it's not charity, it's not philanthropy, it is how do we reinvest into the communities that are supporting us.
Welcome to the Embrace Live podcast, a masterclass in living well, where we uncover how New York's most successful leaders in business, media, and entertainment navigate the intensity of this city while prioritizing wellness, health, purpose, and fulfillment. From boardrooms to red carpets, we dive deep into the habits, mindset, and resilience that keep them thriving in the city that never sleeps.
Hey guys, Robert Bryce here again, and today we have an incredible guest. We have my friend, client, and an inspiration to many. We have Cara Robinson in the house today. Now, if you don't know, you need to know. Cara has been most recently CEO over at Shea Moisture. She was Global Marketing Director of Clinique. She was Vice President of Hair, I think, at L'Oréal Paris.
Very good.
Neutrogena. She's worked with Johnson & Johnson. She's worked at Kraft. And if you've ever heard the tagline, "What's in your wallet?" she is the one who started that campaign. So, Cara?
Hey, Robert.
Did I get that right?
You got it right.
I did. Is there anything to add there? Did I do you justice?
I think you did it great. Thank you.
Okay, well, for people who don't know, let's see, who are you in your own words?
Yeah, wow. Who am I? I am I always define myself as a daughter first. I'm really close to both of my parents, and so I see myself as a daughter first in the world. I am a really loyal friend, and hopefully my friends feel that. And I'm actually someone right now this year that is in a moment of inflection. And as I've been going throughout this year and, talking to other people, I'm not the only one. I know a lot of people are on their, own individual journeys, but this year I am on and it sounds so like, ooh, she's on a journey. But really to discover who I am and emerge as the best version of myself. And that is partly what brought me to you.
Wow. Now, that's interesting because to say emerge as the best version of yourself, up to now hasn't been too shabby. You know what I'm saying? You've done a few things, right?
Yeah, a couple of things, right?
Of things here and there.
Yeah.
So I guess, let's start with Shea Moisture, right?
Yeah.
We're going to kind of do a full circle here.
Yeah.
But for people who don't know, can you explain the significance of Shea Moisture and it being sold to Unilever?
Yeah. I mean, I could talk for an hour just about this.
Right.
So Shea Moisture is part of Sundial Brands, which was founded by Richelieu Dennis. And he sold the company to Unilever in 2017. And then I joined Unilever in 2019 to take over and be the CEO. And one of the really incredible things about Shea Moisture and Richelieu's vision is their model, and he calls it community commerce. And so the model is that they take proceeds from each and every purchase and reinvest back into the communities. And it's not charity, it's not philanthropy. It is how do we reinvest into the communities that are supporting us,
right?
And do that through supporting entrepreneurs. And so it was really, in many ways, the pinnacle of my career because I felt everything up until that point in my career was preparing me to lead this organization that, when a larger company acquires a smaller company, there's a period of transition and integration. There's cultures. There's, determining what is the direction that we want to take going forward, all of that. And it just was such a humbling and fulfilling experience to be able to lead that business.
And now Shea Moisture, culturally, was this brand that really broke molds, right?
Yeah.
Like what before Shea Moisture, I know there was some smaller emerging brands, but can you explain like what was its position to Black culture, to Black women, and how it changed, how we saw beauty?
Yeah. If I think back to when I was a kid or I was a teenager, if I wanted to find hair products for my hair type, and I have a silk press now, so this is not normally how you see me, but if I wanted to find products for me, I would have to go to a independent beauty supply store, or you would really have to go out of your way to find products for our hair type. And what Richelieu did was develop a line of natural ingredient products for all textures of hair. So even though Black women in the Black community embraced it, it really was designed for all hair types. And to be able to go to a Target or a Walmart or a Walgreens and find your product, that was a novel idea.
Right.
In 2000 almost.
Right.
You may see some products at the dusty bottom of the shelf, but he had the vision that, we need to be part of the main beauty aisle and we need to be accessible. And I think a lot of women, particularly of my generation, feel that they helped build that brand.
Right.
And so it's a brand that is near and dear to a lot of people and will always be near and dear to my heart.
Right. And now when it sold, I mean, it wasn't an insignificant number, right? I've seen 1.6.
I can't divulge
the
number,
okay.
and I wasn't there at the time. But yeah, it wasn't. It commanded a great price.
Okay,
yeah.
So you can't say.
I cannot.
Right?
Yeah.
I've seen, and you don't have to confirm or deny. I've seen 1.6 billion. So this is not a small brand.
Right.
This is not some little company. Mom and pop, this is a big brand. Yeah. So for Unilever to see that, was a major deal. Now, so you take over this behemoth of a brand and, you're in the spotlight and we're going to get there, but what prepared you for that moment?
Oh, that is such a good question. Because I was so ill-prepared for the spotlight. So ill-prepared. I didn't either realize or understand that was going to be part and parcel of that kind of role.
Right.
And then to do that in the context of COVID and everything that was happening during that period, I am comfortable public speaking. I can do it. But even the question, what did I do to prepare? I immediately went to media training. That was probably one of the first things that I did. And I had a session with this outside consultant and, he gave me some tips on what to do. But it can be terrifying.
Right.
It can be terrifying because when you're doing that kind of speaking, you are trying to land the points that are important that you're trying to get across, either, eliciting followership or, whatever that may be. You're trying to have an authentic conversation. It's more challenging than I think people realize.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's funny to hear because you've done so much before that. Right?
Yeah.
From Kraft and Johnson & Johnson. So how would you say your career path positioned you for this?
Yeah.
Because it wasn't like you just showed up.
No. No. Yeah. I think the way that my career path led me to that role, I was ready to run the show. I absolutely was at a point in my career where I can be a wonderful follower, but I'm an excellent leader. And so to be able to have the runway and the support and, our dear friend AC who hired me into Unilever, it just was magical because there was a very hands-off approach, which I appreciated. So I had to really figure things out with my team. The support was there, but to be able to really run the show, that's what a leader wants to be able to do.
So now it's so interesting that you say it because you're like, I'm a good follower, but I'm an excellent leader. Yeah. Now, to verbalize that, has that always been something you've been able to verbalize? Has that, because to say that, right, is definitely, you're at a place, I know what I bring.
Right.
And I know who I am.
Yeah.
Right. And I can follow you can give me this thing to lead.
You know,
right?
a year ago, I probably would not have said that.
Just a year ago?
Just a year ago, because I would have been so concerned, are people going to think I'm not humble and Right. I have let go all of that.
Right.
And I know I am a good leader.
Right.
I know that. So I don't have to have any consternation about that.
Right.
I can just say it. Yeah.
Okay. And I love that because, you know, a lot, and your honesty about not being able to say it about a year ago, because I'm thinking Shea Moisture must have given you a platform to really authentically be yourself.
Oh, for sure.
Just from what you're saying with the free reins and then just what the company represented. But then you've been L'Oréal, Kraft, and I can imagine that you didn't have that freedom to just be 100% of yourself.
It's so it's an interesting question because I don't think anyone can give you freedom. I think I may not have thoughts or had the confidence to be able to step into my authentic self.
Right.
But it's not necessarily because someone lets you be that way. I think it's you step into that.
Right.
And so when you step into the fullness of who you are, and I've said before, it's a cliche, but when I decided to go natural with my hair,
right,
it was almost like the final thing that needed to be shed for me to truly be who I am authentically. And as you know, if you live an authentic life, then you resonate with people more deeply. You can make a more profound impact, and you feel better about yourself. You're fulfilled. And so, it just the timing and everything, I finally stepped into that.
And I think we hear that so much, stepping into yourself. If we go a layer beneath that, what does that mean? What does that mean to, okay, I'm going to accept all of it and be all of it? Because for most people, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
And for most people, it's like, I've got to be seen this way. I've got, whether it's socially, on your job, wherever.
Yeah.
So what does it actually mean? What is that stepping into yourself?
I think it is. It's a part of what you just said, where I think many of us hopefully reach a point in our lives where we stop viewing ourselves through the lens of how we think we may be perceived, and you live your life through the lens of yourself.
Right.
Which seems like, of course, everyone should do that. And it can be very challenging if you're in a high profile position and you're, people are covering you. And so then you become aware.
Right.
But it's how do you do it? You have to turn off all of the external searching or validation or whatever. And it's turning it internally. Everything is here.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Wow. You talk about validation, and you talked about AC Bracey, a friend, and I heard you mention Anne Fudge.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And so the higher you get, so to speak, right, or the more responsibility you get, or in these positions of leadership, it must be more lonely because you don't see yourself, right? And so, and I guess this is kind of my brain goes to these places. Like I see you, I see AC, I see all these other people on this level. Naja, right. So it seems to me like there's this superhero black female Illuminati type situation going on, right? Like, but how do you guys
can't speak about the Illuminati on the podcast?
That's another thing you can't speak about. But like, it seems to be a very genuine, supportive connection or group, right? What is that like on that level?
It's incredible. Whether it be AC or I mentioned Naja, who I went to UVA with, Lucinda, and that's what's so special about your studio actually is, there are all kinds of people, women, men, all sorts of ethnicities. but there is a little Black female Illuminati contingent that's in there that is pretty incredible. But it is lonely, and it means that those relationships and friendships are just that much more important. You treasure them, and whether someone's going through a divorce or they're married or the death of a family member, like someone in the circle has been through that. First time you're trying to get on a public board, if it's a professional kind of thing. And I think we just, we all know that we're who we've got.
Right.
And so it makes that bond that much more important.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's great to hear. So we go back to Shea Moisture, right? Huge company.
Yeah.
Legacy in the Black community, right? It's been sold 2 years prior. Now, I think at the time it was maybe economically struggling. Is that fair to say? Or maybe not living to its potential?
There's always room for improvement for any company. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then a lot of the culture, our people, felt ways about this Black company being sold to Unilever, right? And so you step into this, and after the initial, this feels great, I'm ready for this, you've got people feeling a certain way, you've got the goals that you have to hit. How are you feeling in that moment when the fanfare is gone?
Yeah.
And it's like, this is what I'm tasked with.
And first, let me just clarify for the record: I do not work for Unilever anymore or Shea Moisture.
Yes.
So I resigned. So I'm speaking on behalf of myself, not the company. But your question is, what was it like after the dust settled?
Yeah, I'm really trying to get to your feeling, right? Because look, we'll get to the success, right? And we know you're an operator and you can. But in terms of the actual feeling in that moment, right?
Yeah. So shortly after George Floyd's murder, if you remember on social media, aside from his horrific murder, one of the byproducts of that was there was a call to action in the community to support Black-owned businesses. And that was very much aligned with what Shea Moisture was all about.
Right.
It took a turn where there were some consumers who had just learned that Shea Moisture had been sold to Unilever, and they felt deceived by that. There were other people, other consumers, who, like you said, felt some type of way about that. And so internally, the way I felt was a sense of frustration. How do we get the truth out about what we're doing and why we're doing it? And how do we support Black-owned businesses as we always had been doing? But Shea Moisture was trending on Twitter, and people were calling the brand out. They were calling me out personally, and that had never happened to me in my career. And so my right-hand person, who's still there, I could, you said it's kind of lonely at the top. It's also important to have a really strong leadership team, And so she and I was like, I have to say something. I'm compelled. I have to say something. And I didn't know what I was going to say or where it was going to live, but I felt like on behalf of my team, on behalf of the founders, on behalf of everyone, I needed to speak about why this is such a critical moment to understand what Shea Moisture does. So I wrote this letter in my notes on my phone, and I posted it to Instagram, and I think I was on Facebook at the time. And then it kind of took off, and it was on LinkedIn, and I didn't even know LinkedIn, I think it has like a post of the week or something like that, and it was like had the most clicks. But the feeling that I was trying to express, and no one, I don't need sympathy, and no one that's in my position needs sympathy. But there are a lot of Black and brown people in corporate America that are doing incredible work behind the scenes. And no one understands that. And no one can really appreciate that. And so I wanted to speak on behalf of those people that are doing work, trying to support Black-owned businesses, just all of the work that we're doing. I wanted to give a voice to that because I felt, particularly in that moment, we all were hurting and we all were afraid and we all were frustrated. But it doesn't mean that we needed to attack each other.
Wow.
Yeah.
And part of it, because I also spoke to Lisa Price.
Yeah. Love
sold
Lisa, right? Carol's daughter.
Right. When she sold to L'Oréal, there was the same kind of, sellout. And I love what you said about Richelieu when he said it's about selling in. And part of changing a perspective as Black consumers is when you sell, that's success.
It is.
The exit strategy is.
Black founders need to be able to have that as an exit strategy. That is that is one way that you build wealth.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right. And so just helping our people see that is how you build wealth. Yeah. And we need more of that. Right. We need more and more. And obviously, eventually, we want to be the ones buying. Right. But just where we're at right now.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
How do you ground yourself mentally and spiritually?
I'm kind of a creature of habit. So there are certain kind of routines and things that I do or need to do to feel at peace. It starts in the morning. And so I don't turn on the TV at all in the morning. I don't turn on the news. I don't turn on the TV. I started this as we were coming out of COVID because I just felt so overwhelmed with everything. And I just felt there was too much input. And so I had to kind of block out some of the input so I could, be sharp and do my job. And so for me, that starts in the morning. So I don't have, there's no TV on. Music is always playing in my apartment. So I'll have some music playing. I'll make a cup of matcha tea. So I'll do my whole matcha thing. And so like that kind of ritual and I take a long time and play with my 2 dogs. That helps me start the day.
Right.
But other, ways that I'm grounded, I mean, my friends and family keep me grounded.
Right.
I sometimes am surprised when I meet people who I'll meet like a young person who follows me or knows me. And I'm like, me? Oh, yeah. Okay. Like, I'm so not, I don't see myself the way I think other people see me. So, friends and family also keep me humble.
Yeah, well, they have a way of doing that.
Right.
And I guess this is a similar question, but, we have the privilege of seeing you 2-3 times a week, right? Come in the studio, you got a great spirit, you got an infectious laugh, right?
Loud laugh.
It's like, it's awesome, right? And so we get to see this person, right? And I know there's definitely been ups and downs in life. And if you're at an inflection point, there's probably a lot of deep stuff going on underneath the surface, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, when I put my minister hat on, I'm like, okay, if someone can show up like that, with everything else going on, there's got to be some spiritual connection. Now, spirituality means different things for different people. But I guess my question would be, what does spirituality mean for you? Does it mean anything to you? How does it show up in your life? Yeah. Like, because it takes a lot to show up like that. And we're just a gym, right? You have all this other stuff going on.
Yeah.
So
it's a challenging question to answer because I think a part of me, my natural gear is optimistic and joyful.
Right.
That's like my default gear.
Right.
It doesn't mean that I'm like that all the time, obviously.
Right.
And as I've been going through this year, finalized my divorce, I had resigned from Unilever and moved and all of those changes, I have had friends and family ask me like, okay, I don't see you cry, but are you crying? Are you getting it out? Like, how are you?
Right.
And so I am aware that there is something about how I show up that may give the appearance that I don't struggle with things emotionally or mentally. I don't know what to do about that. Like, I don't know what to do about that. But spirituality, that is something I am becoming closer to in this year. When I was young, I was raised Catholic, and at least in my experience, it didn't allow me to like have a deep connection.
Me too.
Okay, you too.
Yeah.
And then later, my mom started going to a Baptist church, and then I was like, okay, this feels a little more like what I need. But now spirituality to me this year, again, I know I'm going to sound kind of kooky, but it's what is happening literally with the planets in the universe. How in tune am I to what is happening with my body and my intuition and my sense? Because, one of the things I said earlier this year to my friends and family was that I want to feel my feelings, because so much of my life has been living from here and not living from here.
Wow.
And so to flip that means doing things for me that weren't natural, like listening to yourself. Don't shut that off. You actually need to listen to that. But I would always kind of rule with my mind and rational thinking. And so this year has really, to me, spirituality has been getting to know myself in the untangible way, and having faith that even though I don't know where this path is going, that it is a preordained path for me and I'm on the right path. Right. I would not have been able to have come to that conclusion without taking this time off this year.
Wow. So what happens when you start feeling your feelings?
It's amazing. It is it makes you feel lighter, because I realize so many things that, I think of Erykah Badu's song Bag Lady, like all the baggage and all the shit that we carry.
Right.
And so part of feeling your feelings is like letting stuff go and getting it out.
Right.
Like literally getting it out of your body. It's been a way that I've connected more deeply with my mom, because I talked to her about things that I wouldn't have necessarily talked to her about. And I think it, to my earlier point where people were like, well, does she cry? Does she get upset? Feeling my feelings in the full spectrum of them and letting, my friends and family see that, I think they just experience me as more real.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So is it correct to say you're taking a sabbatical?
Yeah. Yeah,
okay.
we can call it that.
So talk to me about, because you mentioned a little bit and brief in our conversations, like what led to you stepping down? Because, all right, before we do that, right, let's just establish you took it from where it was, Shea Moisture, and it grew. It was very successful.
It did. And the other thing, which I know I probably should have given you my resume. So after the first 2 years of running Shea Moisture, then my role expanded and I was in charge of all of beauty and well-being for North America. So when I made the decision to resign, I was still running Shea Moisture and running the whole beauty and well-being division for North America.
And from what I've heard, Shea Moisture did well, and then they 5 times, 6 times more responsibility came your way, right?
I don't know how to quantify it,
but something like that, right? It was a big jump.
It was,
right?
It was, yeah.
So I wanted to clarify that, because you'd seen success, right? And when you talk about being an excellent leader, that's just the truth, right? So you get to this place. What then makes you give that up? Stop.
I, after I had made the decision to end my marriage, I was kind of taking stock of my life. And this is where my feelings really started to kick in, because me making the decision to leave Unilever was not something I thought about and did pros and cons and all the stuff I probably would have done. It was a notion. I slept on it. I decided however I felt that next morning was going to be my decision. And I made the decision. And it was because I think my body was trying to tell me the way that you're doing life is not sustainable. You can't keep going at this pace. And there were people that were coming into my life who I had met. There was one woman who said, she was a high profile attorney and, just very accomplished. And she said she was in Whole Foods and just passed out in the produce aisle. And then I met another executive that worked for a huge corporation and also had physical ailments related to the stress. And this is not an indictment on the company. This is how I was doing it. And I was literally giving everything of myself where I remember so distinctly the end of 2020, I felt like a carcass. That's how I felt. I felt like I had nothing left for myself. I felt I had given everything. Think about a carcass. It's like been picked apart. There's nothing left. So that was 2020. And so then 2021, 2022, and 2023, I think my body just was like, this isn't going to work. And so that feeling and starting to be like, I should listen to this was really the biggest impetus.
Wow. And so, you've explained it, but that's what so many Black women, or so many women, but so many Black women get to that point of burnout. I'm not sure if you know Mignona Espy.
Yes, I know her very well. Known her for decades.
She was a client and we did a talk earlier on, and she talked about how she was at a conference and someone came up to her and said, I see that you're hiding. And so she was like, what are you talking about? I'm hiding. And this woman was like, you're presenting a certain way, but I can see that underneath that, whatever you're about to break. And Espy she was saying, I go to these conferences and I see when this executive gets a call from her kid or her husband and turns her phone down because it's too much to deal with, right?
Right.
And so, it's almost like it's so incredible, these things that you accomplish, right? And let's be real, have to overcome as a Black woman, right?
Sure.
And then you get to this place where you've done all of this stuff and then you burn out. Like,
right.
What does that look like?
It's such a good question. Gosh, I have so many thoughts with that. So the first is January, the first week of January of this year was my first week not working.
Right.
And it took the story I'm going to tell you, it made me realize this is going to be a journey and it's not something that's going to happen immediately. So I woke up and I went to Columbia.edu. I went to NYU.edu and I'm looking at all the programs because I was like, what's a third degree that I can get in a year in this time that I'm taking a sabbatical? What kind of degree? Oh, that's insane. I'm already burned out.
Right.
It's Monday and I'm trying to figure out what's a third degree that I can get.
Right.
So then I was like, okay, you need to stop. Let that go. So I put that aside. And then I said, you should travel. You should travel. So then I was like, okay, what continents, what countries have I had a whole spreadsheet. And I was like, oh gosh, you're like doing it. You can't even just be. You need to just be. So that was like the first week. Also the first week, and I've told my friends this story, I was so burned out. I remember I had a bag of trash, like a brown paper bag of trash. And there's a trash chute on our floor. And I had my cell phone because I was leaving after I threw the trash out. And I put my phone on top of the trash in the bag,
right,
knowing like, don't do that because you could throw it out, but you'll get it.
Right.
And I pick up the bag. I take it to the trash chute. I open the chute. I see my phone in the bag. and I put the bag in the trash chute and I close it. And then I thought, I think I threw my phone away. So I had to go get my iPad to find my phone, and I could hear the echo of my phone in the trash chute. And fortunately, it hadn't been compacted, and we were able to get it out. But like, that's how fried my brain was.
Wow.
So that first week was my sign that I need to slow all the way down, and I need to be comfortable with just being.
Just being.
And again, that was faith. That's stepping out on faith. That is not my comfort zone at all. Like, I'm
just
no, you gotta, what are you producing? What are you achieving? If anyone had told me we'd be here, all these months into this year, and I didn't get a third degree and I haven't been to 7 continents, I would have probably been disappointed in myself. Like, what did you do at this time?
Wow.
But the learning journey, obviously, that I've been on is like, that's the problem.
Right.
And so that a lot of that work is what I've been doing.
The reason my eyes perked up is because I've spoken to another client, very successful actor, who said she got, stuff went really, really well in her career. And right at that point, she was like, I'm going to take a big degree. I'm going to take another degree. And then she was like, what am I doing? Like, why do I feel the need to like keep, you know what I mean? So you hear one of those stories and you're like, oh, but then I'm hearing exactly the same.
Yeah. I was speaking to a college friend, his daughter, is at Spelman, and she wanted to talk about career and some other stuff. And so when you're speaking to someone younger, I think for me, it recalled all of the things that I wish I had known, when I was her age. But it's been stepping out on faith. It's been relearning things, and it's been working with people like you. I also have an executive coach. There's someone that I work with for guided meditation and breath work. And so I'm experimenting and trying to find new tools to be the person that I need to be in this next chapter.
Right. And what does it mean to just be? Because it sounds easy.
It's not.
What does it mean?
What does it mean? It means...
And let me put that in context, right? Because I remember we were talking once and you explained how from a very young age you were like about this career. I think you went to night school. I can't remember the whole story.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So then you're on the career path. Then you're like leading these organizations. And this is talent. This is what you've been given, right? And you do it exceptionally, right? And so you've been in this mode, right? All of this time,
right?
So you get to 20 years afterwards, and now you're trying to just be, And you kind of think you can conquer that in the same way that you conquered everything else,
right?
Like, I'm just gonna be. I'm gonna work hard at being, and we're gonna spreadsheet this being thing all the way out,
exactly.
So what does it mean to actually just be?
Yeah. The best analogy to get to that point is a treadmill. So I feel like from right after I graduated from college, I was an ESL instructor in Puerto Rico. I had majored in Spanish, and I was studying for the GMAT, which is the exam you take to go into an MBA program. I was 22, 23. I am much older now. Let's just leave it at that. But from that moment, I felt like I was on this treadmill and focused on this destination of success. And I don't think I realized that I could get off of the treadmill. I could get on another treadmill. I could go for a hike. We could take this analogy wherever, but I just was so focused that it didn't even occur to me that there could be another alternative to just be.
Right.
So to answer your question, what does that look like? That for me, so the thing that I started doing was keeping a video journal. Because in all of the space and time that I've had this year, this is where epiphanies come up. This is where narratives get shed or redirected or what have you. And I wanted to capture those to not forget them. Or if it was a great day or a really crappy day. So that was one way to just be, is I had to do something.
Right.
So doing these little short video things was one thing. But in the work that I do with the person that helps with meditation and breath work, he would send me things that would encourage me and shatter my narrative that if you're on a hammock relaxing, you're not being productive. When actuality, some of the most creative and productive people know how to create space to do nothing.
Right.
Because that's when, your creative juices are flowing. So having, people in my life that were supporting that journey, having the routine of coming into your studio 2 or 3 times a week gave me a sense of purpose. So I wasn't getting up to go to work, but I was getting up to do that. So it was like slowly rebuilding a life that didn't center around my job.
Right. Wow. So if there was a message that you wanted to give to women in the same position, because I think at this moment, I'm probably going to butcher the history, right, and boil it down to something very simple, but, there's a moment when Black women weren't leading. And then I think it was in 2015, Nielsen came out with that report, Black women have power or whatever. And then you see these women just, and obviously before 2015, but just in all of these places leading these great organizations. And it's been awesome, but there's been an effect of that, right? Which is a lot of people have been burnt out.
Yeah.
So if there's a woman going through that right now, what would you say to her?
Oh, gosh. I'm pausing because I know women that are there right now. It's hard to even think of how do you instruct someone. I think, someone asked me a couple of years ago, when is the last time you experienced joy? And I couldn't answer that question. So that was kind of like a wake-up call, like, that's unfortunate. That's not really the life that I wanted to have. So, gosh, what would I say to someone? I mean, for me, like someone just asking that question was enough to kind of help me reassess things. I don't know what you tell someone. I think, I think it's important that women in those positions know that they're not alone.
Right.
And just to put some of the bags down, honestly. There's a online or a Zoom, because it was during COVID, Deborah Lee has, Leading Women Define, and Ursula Burns, who was the CEO of Xerox, the first Black female Fortune 500 CEO, I believe. And she was speaking to all of us who were all those kind of women that you're talking about. And she said something like, she reached a point where she started to say no. And I still was very much in a yes, yes, yes. You want me to be on your interview panel? Yes. You want me to speak it? Yes, yes. I'll do, because you asked me, I'm going to do it.
Right.
And she said, why? To what end? Like, why are we killing ourselves, flying all over the country? And, some of it is because we have interest. But I think so many of us, it doesn't occur to us to just say no. Or we think we're going to disappoint someone, or we're going to hurt someone's feelings. And so you're prioritizing everyone else. I'm working to my answer. This is my answer, Robert. Because when I first started working with my executive coach this year, she asked me to do like these little exercises. And one of them was to list the top three most important people in my life. Like, easy. Mom, dad. And then I was like, me, put myself down. And as we're going through it, I'm like, oh, I already see the lesson. I was supposed to put myself first. But I think so many women feel like it's selfish or you're not doing your job. And then we've also heard you can't pour from an empty cup. And so I guess what I would say is just try to center yourself in some kind of way in the midst of everything that we all have going on in our lives. You have to fortify yourself.
Right. Wow. Yeah, I think this is very helpful. I'm just thinking about, you said you're thinking about people you know right now. Yeah. I'm thinking about people I know right now who are in that place.
In it.
But to put down the bag and get off the treadmill almost seems, it's like a foreign language. It's like, I just can't. And then you have, some women who are the main breadwinners for their families.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So then there's that whole thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, wow. So, I'm very happy that you took your sabbatical.
I am too. And wait, let me tell you about the sabbatical. So when I'm fortunate enough that I can take this full year off, but I said to myself, I'm only going to take 3 months off. Take a year off, 3 months. And then it was like 6 months. And then it was 9 months. And now I'm like fully. So I am also glad that I'm taking the full year because I almost didn't.
That's great.
Yeah.
You're learning along the way.
I am.
So do you give yourself flowers for what you've accomplished so far? No?
Very hard.
Now, this is why when we're out here, what did I say? I said, oh, how was your my
housewarming?
Your housewarming. Yeah. And you said, right? And the reason that's significant, and I've been coached on this as well, is that when you say no, you haven't given yourself your flowers yet, right? Because I could ask you what contributed to your success, and I guarantee I had a great team, and I had great people behind me, and whatever, great and all that's true, right? But I find that it's very difficult for us to say, you know what, this is what I did. This is the impact that I've had. Yeah. And from a spiritual perspective, this word has come up a lot recently. I think Kamala has been saying she doesn't aspire to be humble.
Yes.
Right?
Oh my God, that resonated.
Some people are like,
no, I loved it.
And here's the thing.
So necessary.
As a former minister, you got to be humble. You got to be humble. That word, the original meaning of the word, means to take up your full space in the world. Not too much, not too little, but to take up your full space in your world because you've been given these gifts to share, right? And so what we've made it become is lessen yourself. Don't talk too much about yourself, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you look at what you've accomplished, what pats on the back do you give yourself?
It's not even like me being fake humble.
Right.
I actually had this conversation with my executive coach about like, why is this so hard? She's like, what's going on here? And I think there's a part of me that feels like I have to struggle and I have to work hard and it's got to be impossible before I can pat myself on the back.
Right.
And that's like trauma. There's so many reasons why people are wired that way. But so I'm learning how to get better with that.
Wow.
You're laughing. I'm laughing. You understand?
This conversation is making so many connection points, and I'm not guessing it. There's another client who I spoke to, and she transformed her body, looks great, really strong, and every time we work out, she's like, "Oh, let's go hard." And I'm like, "No, we don't actually have to do that. Right. Like you can stretch, or you can." And she's like, "Why? Like, what? You don't believe in me? You don't think I can do it?" And I'm like, No, I'm just saying, let's take care of your body, right? And so we had a fireside chat, and she said she realized she had to check herself after one of those conversations because she realized, same thing, I feel like everything has to be hard. She goes, so when you said go do yoga, she was like, you think I'm a punk? Like, what? Like,
yes.
Oh my
God. I feel so seen.
Oh my gosh. So I was like, and so in that moment, she was like, and I realized there's something wrong with that, right? And so she's been stretching and doing yoga. And so when you say that I feel like it needs to be hard, and I'm like, oh, wow, this is a thing.
It's a thing. It's a thing. No, I think you even did that with me when I hurt this knee. And I was like, no, I'll just thug it out. And you're like, no, you're going to injure yourself. Like, you can't do that.
Right.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
So, well, look, one of the things I wanted to say is, at least in your time at Shea Moisture, right? Mm-hmm. I know that you went to Ghana.
I did.
And you went to North Ghana and you saw the women there putting the Shea together, right? My family's from Ghana.
Yeah, I know.
My aunt has a small shea butter business where she gets Shea from, North Ghana. Yeah. So I think about these kind of weird global connections. I think about one of the things growing up is my mom would work so hard. Mm. And one of the things that I remember, like, as a small kid being happy about is when she was going out, because she would, do her skin and do her hair, and then she goes out. And then as I get married and I've got my wife and I'm watching her get ready and Shea Moisture's there, and I'm watching my daughters now, right? And, they've used those products, but watching them do their hair, do their skin, feel great about it. Yeah. Sometimes I'm just sitting there watching and I'm like, Dad, you're just weird. Like, stop.
Well, you are the only man in the house, right?
I am.
You must marvel at just.
But to me, it's like, it shows, it tells me that they're happy or they're feeling good about themselves. And so as I look at that, and, I didn't know you at that time, but there's so many touch points of inspiration that I think, I've seen in my family, and I'm sure many women around the world have felt. So thank you for that. Thank you, I'm going to switch modes very sharply here, because I do want to ask this question. It's more personal. It's more like...
That wasn't personal before?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's true. But like, and I know we're going to wrap up soon. Yeah, it's all good. I've worked with so many people who call themselves brand managers. Everybody's a brand consultant, right?
Yeah, they are.
And it's fallen short, right? As someone who's worked with many of well-known brands, what are two things we need to think about when we're thinking about building a brand?
Yeah. For me, it's really simple. And I have built brands. Like you mentioned Capital One. When I went to Capital One, the company was 7 years old. No one had heard of Capital One. And so to be able to work on the team that developed those first What's in Your Wallet campaigns was amazing. I've also worked on brands that are very established, like a Clinique. And maybe you're trying to reposition. But what is always important is you need to have a clear understanding of who you are. And when I say who you are, I mean the brand. Who are you as a brand? Why do you exist? What's your reason for being? Why are you, and then you can take it further. What makes you new, better, or different than other brands? But you have to have a clear understanding of like who you are as a brand. And that either can be mining your history if you're an older brand, or if you're a new brand that's taking off. It could mean defining what that is. But the first is who you are as a brand. What is your positioning? What's your purpose? What's your reason for being? The second thing is, who are you for? And being really sharp about that. And some people that manage brands say, well, we're for everybody. You can't be for everybody. And the way that you as a brand communicate with a consumer today, you can be so highly targeted and precise to say you're for everybody, like that no brand manager would say it. So really knowing what is the essence of the brand? What's the DNA of the brand? And then who are you really for? Who's that core? If that consumer isn't happy, then no one's happy. Those are kind of the two tenets to me. And then I offer a third one that I think is equally important, which is what is the culture that is going to support that? So that culture could be, it's a team of 4 people. That's how big your company is. But what are your ways of working? How do you want to communicate? How do you want to be with each other? If you're a large organization like the one that I had run, what is the culture that's going to enable the brand to be what it needs to be and for us to be able to connect with our consumer the way that we need to? So to me, those 3 things have to work together.
Right. Wow. Thank you. 101. Okay. Cara, thank you so much for this interview. I think we talked about some important stuff.
We did.
So your last thoughts, anything on whatever, can be on leadership, can be on taking a break,
I do want to talk about, which is how this even came to be. Like I go to your studio to get stronger. And it has been, in this year, as I have said, I want to be the best version of myself. I'm working on becoming, emotionally strong and broad or whatever, mentally, but physically.
Right.
We talked a lot about mental and emotional health, but the transformation that I've been able to do working with you and working with everyone at the studio on my physical health and my strength has improved or helped my emotional state or my, that obviously, but to be able to have a space. I've never in my life wanted to go to the gym. I would go because I want to look a certain way, but to actually want to go to the studio, want to work out, it's unlike anything. So you have created an amazing environment, and I thank you for what you've brought to my life this year.
Thank you so much. That's a nice way to end.
All right.
Thank you.